Excuse me, Deputy Cross?
And these guys you're about to meet are not federal agents.
In upstate New York, Mallory Kinane, an operative working for a private government contractor, walks into a quiet diner and picks a seat toward the back. Moments later, a car pulls up outside, and her colleague, Aaron, another operative, steps inside. He slumps into the seat across from her, reeking of alcohol, and wastes no time getting to the point. He tells her they have orders, and she needs to leave with him immediately. Mallory refuses. She wants answers first. But Aaron isn't interested in explaining anything. Without warning, he lunges at her. As the fight breaks out, stunned customers rush to separate them, giving Mallory just enough time to gain the upper hand. She swiftly disarms Aaron and knocks him out cold. Grabbing her things, she turns to one of the onlookers, Scott, and demands his car keys. With no other choice, Scott hands him over, and she speeds off with him in tow. As they drive, Scott helps her patch up a wound on her arm. Curious about Aaron, he asks if they were a couple, but she quickly shuts that down. She tells him she works for a government contractor, and Scott seems impressed. A week earlier, in Washington, D.C., Kenneth, the director of the firm Mallory works for, meets with CIA agent Sins and another operative, Rodrigo. They discuss a mission in Barcelona to rescue a kidnapped journalist, Jang. The CIA insists Mallory be part of the mission, knowing she's the best at what she does, despite Kenneth's reluctance. Upon arriving in Barcelona, Mallory meets Rodrigo, who pries about her history with Kenneth. She brushes it off, saying it's strictly business. Soon after, Aaron joins them, and they wait for their other teammates, Victor and Jimia, to strategize. The mission plan is simple: identify the captors, track them, and rescue Jang. As they prepare, Aaron expresses concerns, suggesting they need more people. But Mallory and the rest of the team are confident they have things under control. The following day, they wait until their target leaves the holding location before making their move. Armed and ready, they storm the building, grabbing Jang and heading out. But things go south when their main suspect unexpectedly returns, guns blazing. A street shootout erupts. Mallory chases the suspect through the city, weaving through alleys and rooftops until she finally catches him and takes him down. With the mission complete, they hand Jang over to Rodrigo's team. Aaron questions why she bothered going after the suspect when they already had the hostage. Mallory simply responds that she doesn't like loose ends. Back in the States, Mallory is at home when she receives a package, a book written by her father, John, a former soldier. Before she can relax, there's a knock at her door. Gun in hand, she cautiously checks, only to find Kenneth standing there. He's been trying to reach her, but she hasn't been answering. She tells him she needs a break. She's taken on 3 missions in 2 weeks. Kenneth doubts she even knows how to take a break. He pitches her a new job, an MI6 request. One of his operatives, Paul, has gotten close to a French target named Stutter in Ireland. They need her to pose as Paul's wife for the mission. Kenneth assures her it's an easy job, 2 days in and out. Reluctantly, Mallory agrees. Arriving in Dublin, she meets Paul at the airport, slipping into their fake relationship effortlessly. They check into a hotel, unpacking their gear, guns, cash, surveillance devices. While Paul showers, Mallory hacks into his phone, installing a tracker, just in case. Meanwhile, Paul snoops through her belongings, stumbling upon her brooch. That night, dressed for an upscale gathering, they head to a private estate where Stutter is hosting a party. Mallory feels out of place in the lavish setting. She's more comfortable in combat boots than cocktail dresses. While getting drinks, she notices a man staring at her, as if he recognizes her. Stutter soon makes his entrance, casually mentioning his sudden plans to travel abroad the next day. He invites them to join him, all expenses paid. Paul steps away to speak privately with Stutter, and Mallory, tracking his phone, notices he's left the building. She discreetly moves to a window and spots Paul and Stutter deep in conversation. Stutter refers to Paul as Richard, hinting at deception. Mallory plays along, pretending to be tipsy and lost. As she snoops further, she stumbles upon a horrifying sight: Jang's lifeless body, her brooch clutched in his hand. Alarm bells ring in her head. Something is very wrong. Paul calls, asking where she is. She lies, saying she's in the restroom. He insists they leave immediately. Back at the hotel, Mallory removes her heels before stepping inside. As she suspected, Paul attacks her. A brutal fight breaks out. She overpowers him, throwing him through a glass door. When he reaches for his gun, she moves faster, choking him unconscious before silencing him with a single shot, using a pillow to muffle the sound. Catching her breath, she searches his phone and redials a missed call. Kenneth answers, expecting Paul. When he hears nothing but silence, he realizes it's Mallory. She hangs up and immediately calls her father, warning him that things have gone sideways. He tells her to be careful. Leaving the hotel, she notices a man across the street shadowing her. A car creeps by, slow and deliberate. She keeps her pace steady. Just as the man falls in step behind her, she suddenly takes off, sprinting across the street and into a parking garage. She ditches her phone on a random car before slipping back onto the street. Cutting through a fast food joint, she maneuvers her way to a hidden alley, just in time to see her pursuers storm past, searching for her. Hailing a cab, she manages to evade them. Once safe, she ducks into a store for supplies. But as she rummages through her bag, she finds a tracking device planted inside. Panic sets in. Sirens wail in the distance. She bolts from the store just as cops swarm in. Weaving through the crowded streets, she slips into a hotel, knowing she has little time before they find her. Before long, a heavily armed police team storms into the hotel, locking down every exit. Mallory wastes no time and bolts straight to the top floor. She scrambles onto the roof and leaps across nearby buildings, narrowly dodging the officers closing in on her. Ducking into another building, she realizes the ground floor is already swarming with cops. Thinking fast, she forces her way into a room just as two officers enter the floor. The moment they step inside, she ambushes them without hesitation. After knocking them out cold, she slips back onto the rooftops, sprinting across more buildings before attempting to climb down. Unfortunately, she loses her grip and takes a hard fall. Shaken but determined, she drags herself to a parked car, swipes a hoodie, and blends into the crowd, slipping past the police blockade unnoticed. Wasting no time, she hails a cab and heads straight for the docks. Desperate for answers, she calls Rodrigo, who is stunned to hear from her. She demands to know whether he or Kenneth was the one who sold her out to Stutter. Instead of answering, Rodrigo abruptly hangs up. Under the cover of night, Mallory sneaks into the port and quietly boards a ferry. Meanwhile, Rodrigo reports the call he received from her. DeQuinz, realizing Mallory is still on the move, warns Rodrigo to stay indoors with his family until further notice. Later, DeQuinz traces Mallory's number from Rodrigo's phone and calls her directly. He makes it clear he isn't interested in arresting her, but rather wants her to continue chasing after Kenneth. He suspects Kenneth is tangled in something much larger, with an even bigger player pulling the strings from behind the scenes. Mallory demands to be removed from the watch list, but DeQuinz explains that doing so would tip Kenneth off. However, he assures her that he will do everything possible to convince Kenneth to meet her so they can both get the answers they need. Mallory later tells Scott how DeQuinz arranged a meeting between her and Kenneth at a diner, but Aaron showed up instead. While discussing their next move, they suddenly encounter a police roadblock. Thinking fast, Mallory makes a sharp U-turn and speeds off, with a patrol car hot on their tail. She veers onto a snowy trail, and Scott groans about his poor car taking a beating. A second cop car attempts to block their escape, but she skillfully throws the car into reverse, dodging it. Just when it seems like they might get away, they collide with a deer, sending them crashing into a tree. With no other options, they surrender to the authorities. While being transported, the officers receive a radio transmission instructing them to deliver the prisoners to a specific location. Supposedly, federal agents are en route to pick them up. Sensing danger, Mallory warns the cops that the so-called agents are imposters and urges them to verify their identities. The officers scoff at her warning and dismiss her concerns. As they arrive at the destination, Mallory discreetly maneuvers her handcuffs to the front of her body. Suddenly, a black van screeches to a halt nearby, and gunfire erupts, killing the officers. Acting fast, Mallory snatches a gun, fires back at the attackers, disables their vehicle, and jumps into the police car before speeding away. Realizing Scott is now a liability, she decides to part ways to keep him safe. Before they split, she gives him a number and instructs him to call and report everything he has just witnessed. Meanwhile, DeQuinz meets Kenneth in a parking lot, advising him to talk to Mallory's father. If he convinces him that Mallory is a fugitive, he might help them turn her in. Meanwhile, Mallory reaches her father's house and warns him that fake federal agents will be showing up soon. She preps him on how to handle the situation and how to get inside Aaron's head. Her father suggests they vanish, but she refuses. She's done running. Shortly after, Kenneth, Aaron, and several agents arrive at John's house. Kenneth accuses Mallory of taking out multiple men and demands to know if she ever mentioned his name. Playing it cool, John denies ever hearing of Kenneth. Pressuring him further, Kenneth insists that Mallory is now a public threat and must be stopped. Mallory, who has been hiding and listening in, hears John claim she last contacted him 10 days ago, saying she was in Barcelona but offering no further details. Kenneth reveals that Zhang was a British intelligence officer, but John suggests something must have happened in Barcelona to set all this off. Interestingly, every time Barcelona is mentioned, Erin seems visibly uneasy. Mallory then calls, prompting Erin to start tracing her location before John picks up. She demands to speak with Kenneth, giving him an ultimatum. Either he tells her the truth now, or she'll make him talk later, with her hands wrapped around his throat. Kenneth urges her to surrender for her father's sake, but she bluntly tells him his time is up. Just then, Erin completes the trace and realizes Mallory is inside the house. He asks Kenneth what really happened in Barcelona, but before Kenneth can respond, the lights go out. Erin immediately orders the house to be locked down suddenly. A gunshot echoes through the house. Investigating, Erin finds one of his men dead in the garage. Hearing another noise, he sends an operative to check it out while he rushes back to Kenneth, who is growing increasingly anxious. Meanwhile, Erin receives a photo of Zhang's dead body and begins doubting Mallory's involvement. Confronting Kenneth, he accuses him of framing Mallory and demands the truth. Realizing he's been caught, Kenneth suddenly shoots Erin in the stomach and warns John not to give him a reason to be next. Meanwhile, an agent searching for Mallory hears something and goes to investigate, only to be attacked by her. A brutal fight ensues, but Kenneth seizes the opportunity to slip away. Mallory eliminates her opponent, but by the time she rushes outside, Kenneth has already vanished. She returns to find Erin gravely wounded. He weakly admits he was blind to the truth and struggles to breathe. Despite his efforts, he succumbs to his injuries. Lost in thought, Mallory is pulled back to reality when John embraces her, offering his condolences. Days later, Mallory meets D. Krins in an airport hangar. He confesses that while he was Kenneth's employer, he had no idea of his true activities. His plan was to lure Kenneth to her father's house so she could eliminate him, but she let him slip away. He offers to clear her record and even replace Scott's wrecked car. In return, he suggests she consider working for the CIA if she plans on continuing her hunt for Kenneth. According to his intel, Kenneth has likely crossed into Mexico, and Mallory prepares to track him down while keeping DeCoyan's offer in mind. Elsewhere, Kenneth lies low in a remote hotel, desperately trying to contact Stutter for help, but Stutter ignores his calls. The next morning, Kenneth, sensing danger, arms himself and heads for a walk along the beach. As he nears the rocky shoreline, Mallory suddenly charges at him from behind. The two engage in a fierce fight, with Kenneth attempting to flee. She drags him back to the beach, where he stumbles and gets his legs stuck between rocks. Watching the tide slowly rise, Mallory demands he confess the truth. Kenneth finally spills everything. Zhang was a journalist digging into Stutter's involvement in human trafficking. When Mallory decided to leave Kenneth's company with all her intel, Kenneth and Rodrigo saw an opportunity to kill two birds with one stone. They used Mallory to extract Zhang from his safe house, then had Rodrigo deliver him to Stutter for execution. Kenneth had then relayed the plan to Paul, setting up Mallory to take the fall for Zhang's murder before arranging for her to be killed in the hotel under the guise of self-defense. Satisfied, Mallory walks away, leaving Kenneth to his fate as the waves creep closer. Meanwhile, Rodrigo is enjoying his luxurious villa in Spain. When the doorbell rings, his girlfriend answers, only to be grabbed. Moments later, Rodrigo, sensing something is off, goes to check, only to be confronted by Mallory, ready to finish what she started.